It all started with Abraham. Abraham was born as Abram in Babylon, and his father was an idol merchant. But he soon started to question his father's faith. So one night he destroyed all of his father's idols except for one, the biggest of them all. When his father returned and asked him what happened, Abram said, "The idols got in a fight, and the big one smashed all the other ones." His father said, "Don't be ridiculous. These idols have no life or power. They can't do anything." Abram replied, "Then why do you worship them?" As time went by, God reached out to Abram again and offered a great nation and a blessed life, in the expense of leaving his family and home. This established the Brit. The idea of the Brit is that the Jews have a covenant, a contract with God, which involves rights and obligations on both sides. They have an obligation to God, and God has certain obligations to them. So back to Abraham and God's will. God said that he will bless him with children if he moved to the promised land, Canaan. That would come with a great expense to Abraham, considering that he was already 75 years old and believed his wife, Sarah, could not conceive a child. Nevertheless, Abraham accepted God's offer and moved to Canaan. But as time passed by, Abraham started to lose faith in God's promise. But when Abraham turned 100 and Sarah was 90 years old, Sarah got pregnant and gave birth to a wonderful boy, Isaac. As centuries passed, the descendants of Israel became slaves in Egypt. They suffered greatly under the hand of pharaohs. But God brought the children of Israel out of Egypt under the leadership of Moses. God led them in a journey through the wilderness of Mount Sinai. Here, God revealed himself to the children of Israel and offered them a great covenant. If they would hearken to God and observe his covenant, they will have the most beloved of nations, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. God revealed the Torah to his people, both written and oral, and the entire nation responded, "Everything that the Lord has spoken, we will do." According to the Jewish tradition, every Jewish that would ever be born was present at the moment, agreed to be bound to this covenant.
In Judaism, there are 6 most important figures: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, David, and King Solomon. Abraham was the founder of Judaism. God made a lot of promises, but in exchange, Abraham would have to obey God, doing whatever he said. When Abraham turned 100 and his wife Sarah turned 90, they had a son named Isaac. As the Jewish tradition says, that the first male-born son has to be sacrificed. So Isaac was on his way to die when God sent an angel to stop Abraham. Isaac was the first Jew to be born a Jew whose parents were a Jew. He married Rebekah and had a son named Jacob. Jacob struggled a lot with God in his entire life. He was a liar, a schemer, and manipulator. But he was also one of the patriarchs of the Great Testament. Soon he became leader of the 12 tribes. Moses was the prophet that God took to on top of the Mount Sinai, giving him the main 10 Testaments. That soon became the basic law in the Jewish faith. David was the first king in Jerusalem. He made Jerusalem the capital of Israel. He determined that the only place you can worship with God is in Jerusalem. David had a son with Bathsheba named Solomon. Solomon soon became the king. He created a strong traditional empire, and also the great temple where people could worship with God. When Solomon died, the northern part of the kingdom rebelled. After, the kingdom was divided in the north of Israel
Jews don't
and the
exactly
south
have a
of
Bible.
Judah.
The closest they have to one is a Tanakh, a collection of all Jewish writings and laws. It includes the Torah, Nevi, that is for prophets, and Ketuvim, for words. Jews believe that God spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, and during that conversation told the prophet how he wanted these people to live. Divided into 5 sections, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, the Torah is written in Hebrew, the oldest of Jewish languages, and also written in an animal skin, usually a cow that is sacred to Jews. It is the first and most important document in the Tanakh, but the story doesn't stop there. According to their beliefs, God also spoke to Abraham about commandments that are passed orally from generation to generation. This oral law was written into the Talmud, which is divided into 2 parts, the Mishnah and the Gemara, one being God's words and the other rabbis' commentaries about it.
The Jews have 4 sacred cities, each one that helped to form Jewish religion as it is now. For example, Jerusalem is the holy city for the Jews. One of the reasons it is holy is because there is where the holy temple was built and chosen to be built by a king called David and a prophet called Samuel. Hebron is holy because that was the place where the Jews' ancestors, also known as patriarchs and matriarchs, were buried. The other holy city is Safed, holy because it is the center of mysticism, that is, the claim of things without explanation. Finally, the last city, Tiberias, that is holy because there is where the Talmud is. Talmud is a very important text of rabbinic Judaism. Other than cities, Jews have holy places like the synagogue, that is like a Jewish church but with different costumes. There they worship, learn about Jewish religion, do bar mitzvahs and other Jewish events, and where Jews gather.
On the Jewish religion, the main symbol is the Star of David. Some of their customs and traditions is that their spiritual leader is called the Rabbi, and the place that they worship God is called the synagogue. The name of their holy book is called the Torah. When they go to the synagogue, males are obligated to wear a kippah, that is a small hat that they put on their head, and a tefillin, that is a band that they put on their arms and on their foreheads, and on each of them has a little cube that contains 4 passages from the Torah. When male Jews are burned, they do a thing called circumcision. That is when they take out the skin, the upper part of the skin of their penis. The Jewish also has something called the Jewish dietary law, also known as kashrut. That is a law that says the correct way, according to the religion, to make food. One of the requirements is that all the blood need to be removed, and they can only eat meat, chicken, and fish. They cannot eat seafood. They also have 2 main celebrations. The Passover, that is celebrated on the 21st day of Nisan and is the first month on the Jewish calendar. And this is where they celebrate, this is the day that they celebrate when the Jews were freed from the Egypt. The other main celebration is called the Hanukkah, that's celebrated on the 9th month of Kislev. That's Kislev on the day 24th. And they do this to commemorate the rededication of the Second Temple.
There's no concrete written thing that explains all the principles of faith or all the things that the Jewish believes. But Rabbi Rember was a Rabbi that he created a widely concept thing that is called the 13 Principles of Faith that summarizes everything. 1. The 13 Principles of Faith starts explaining that God exists. 2. God is one and unique, so there is no other gods. 3. God is incorporeal, that means no one can possess it. 4. God is eternal, it means that God will live forever. 5. The person should be redirected to God and only, so you can't be directed to any material piece, like you can't pray for something that isn't God. 6. The word of the prophets are true. So that means that everything that Moses says, you need to take it as true. 7. Moses was the greatest of all prophets. That means that there's no other prophet that is better than Moses. 8. The Torah was given to Moses, and you can't believe that Moses wrote the Torah in period. God gave the Torah directly to Moses. 10. God knows the thoughts and deeds of men. That means that God knows everything, what you think and what you did. 11. God will reward the good and punish the bad. 12. The Messiah will come because Judaism is the only religion that hasn't received their Messiah yet. No one claims to be the Son of God. 13. The dead will be resurrected. So it means that if you die, you will be reincarnated.
1813 BCE, Abraham is born. 2000 to 1500, era of patriarch. 1713, Abraham forms the first covenant with God. 1500 to 1200, the Exodus. 950, first temple is constructed. 586, first temple destroyed. 428, second temple built. 164, Hasmonean revolt. 70 BCE, second temple destroyed. Other events that have a great impact were the Crusades and the Holocaust. This is Judaism and its history.